بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على الهادي محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. My teachers often would talk about Ramadan as being a training camp, a time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designates an entire month, and in His wisdom has decided that we as humans require an entire month in terms of being able to reset, renew, kind of cleanse, right? And then be able to handle the rest of the year that's to come. And for whatever reason, it was not a day or a week or a couple of weeks. It's actually a full-on month. And there's a wisdom to that. And the fasting, which we'll kind of touch on, and inshallah in your classes, in the fiqh classes, you'll go into much more depth about the nitty-gritty and nuances about the yes and the no and what to do and what not to do, subhanAllah. But the interesting thing is there's much, much more to Ramadan than just the fasting. And that means that there's different levels of Ramadan. And our teachers teach us that many people kind of only really reach Ramadan in that first, they only experience Ramadan in that first level, which is a physical level, a level of fasting. And, not eating much or in a different pace, if you will. Some people tend to actually gain weight in Ramadan and eat more, mashallah, because it's just a different system than the rest of the months of the year. And I always tell this joke, so forgive me if you've heard it from me before, but one time I was watching a news, news, regular news, and they were making an announcement about the Muslim month of what should have been Muslim month of fasting is coming in. So they were kind of announcing that on the news. And instead she had like a plate of like food, and it said on it, the Muslim month of feasting has started. Not what's going on here, inshallah. Although if you entered into some people's Ramadans, if you kind of like opened the curtain and looked, it might look like that, subhanAllah. So we definitely don't want to just limit this to the month of feasting or just eating and lack of eating. And so that first level our teachers talk about is, they say it's the fasting of the general masses, the awam. The fasting of the awam, or the general masses of people. And that means keeping the body away from food, intimate relations, water, right, during the daylight hours. And for many people, that's really kind of where Ramadan starts and ends. But we are hoping to get to level 2 and maybe, ya Rab, inshallah, level 3. And what are those levels? That's the levels of the fasting of the special people. That's literally what it translates to from Arabic. And what it means in this case is a person who, in addition to fasting from food and drink, they're also fasting from all of their 5 senses. All of their 5 senses. So it's not just what enters into the mouth, but also what's said by the tongue, and what is listened to by the ears, and what is looked at with the eyes, what is thought about in the mind, right, and what is touched physically as well. So it's the fasting on a more spiritual level, and this, they say, this is the fast of the special people, and keeping the entire body away from sin. The entire body away from sin, all of our senses. And the third level, see, in Islam, subhanAllah, it's a beautiful thing, because we're always described, all the fara'id, or the obligations of Islam, are usually described to us in different levels, so that we can understand what we're reaching for. Like, it may be kind of far for us at this moment, but you want to know what to aim for, right? And so what is that third level? And they say this is the fast of the extra special people. So in another way of saying it, the elect, right, and the elite. And what they mean by that here is, this is the fasting of the heart from all worldly matters, leaving out everything other than Allah Azza wa Jal. And they say this is the fast of the prophets and the messengers and the awliya, the people who are friends or close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even though it may be out of reach, because a person says, but I have work and I have kids and I have school and I have all kinds of other stuff, how do I do this level 3? This is kind of just something to aim for. And there are people, subhanAllah, when Ramadan comes, they truly kind of, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his description, the way they described him with Ramadan is, when Ramadan would come, he would fold over his mattress, as in to say, very little sleep, and he would tighten his belt, as in to say, very little food. And so our teachers often remind us that Ramadan is a month of little food and little sleep. And it's designed that way, by design. And so if you, not just when you feel the rumbles and even hear the rumbles right before iftar comes in, right before maghrib comes in, but it's also like the pangs of hunger, that's one thing, but it's also little sleep. And that typically is what gets a lot of people. It's the lack of caffeine, it's the lack of sleeping, it's the praying, mashallah, and then rushing, and then getting up for suhoor, and then doing work all day or having kids with you all day, and then whatever responsibilities, and then the fasting physically on top of it, and then the prayers, and then lack of sleep, and then by the time you get to the end of the month, you're a little bit disheveled. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's hard. And our teachers say, and that is the sign that you're doing Ramadan right. And if you are tired and hungry and kind of a little disheveled by the end of it, that is Ramadan done right. But when Ramadan is sort of more of a luxurious thing, right, with a lot of luxurious food and invitations and, well, for lack of a better word, partying, inshallah, this is Ramadan at one level. It's a level of Ramadan, but it's certainly not the level of the special, right, the elect or the elite that we've been talking about here. And whenever we talk about this with women, in my halakas, for example, on Friday nights, whenever we do our Ramadan readiness, there's always some ladies who are not very happy with me after I say these things. And I say, I'm just teaching what our teachers have taught us and what's in the books, mashallah. I'm not here to criticize people's get-downs. I really am not, mashallah. But I realize, and I grew up, I think I've shared with some of you, I've grown up in, Muslim community in which, like, as kids, we loved Ramadan because it was like house hopping time, from this house to that house to this house. And it was great. We saw all our friends, and there was just lots of fun and food happening. And people prayed, but there was just a lot of social activity in Ramadan, and that was great for us as kids. But then as I got older and certainly started studying Islam much more carefully, I realized there was a lot going on in those settings that was not conducive to the month of Ramadan. It's one thing to do the one sunnah, because people kind of fixate on the one sunnah. There's a whole list of sunnahs to do, and they'll fixate on the one sunnah of breaking other people's fasts. And so they have all these invitations back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But they're missing out on all the other sunnahs, and more importantly, the other fara'id, the actual things that are obligations. Like what? Like, for example, in these social settings, I'd often note that because people were busy kind of wanting to break fast, they would delay prayer. And sometimes Maghrib would be prayed very, very late. And sometimes, and I promise you, I have witnessed this, and I wonder if you've witnessed this too, but in the festivity of it all, particularly the host, who's very kind of like running around, right? And the people who are talking and doing whatnot, actually missing the Fard prayer altogether. Or potentially, in preparing the food and hosting and cleaning the house and getting it ready and whatnot, just literally missed obligations, such as the prayers or anything that they had put in terms of, maybe it's not an obligation, but they put in their goal, I want to be able to do X, Y, Z. I want to read this much Quran. I want to pray this much, and they missed all of these goals because they were so busy doing all these other types of festivity type related things. And so our teachers remind us right off the bat that that is not the intention of the month of Ramadan, even though this is how many people culturally have adapted to Ramadan. However, that is the intention of Eid. Allahu Akbar. That's exactly the intention of Eid. Eid is literally to have festivity, to eat, enjoy, and jump, and play, and run, and give gifts, and invite all the people over, and hop around from house to house. That is the point of Eid. And particularly in the United States, or for all of the sisters who are from different countries that are tuning in, although the people from Muslim majority countries, maybe it's a little different, but for us here in the West, we have to make a super duper effort for Eid so that our kids even feel that it's Eid, right? Otherwise, it's just another day. And so a lot of that effort should be placed there. So to begin, in Ramadan readiness, one of the main messages that are often said in this Ramadan prep on a spiritual level is sit down in these next couple of weeks and have a talk with your family and a talk with your in-laws, if you can, inshallah. That's the harder one. And a talk with your friends, right? Because they are like family here in the West, especially. Friends become like family. And you really just sort of say, look, this year I think I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I think I want to try to aim for the fast of the elect or the fast of the elite. I want to try to aim for not having, accepting so many of these invitations. Let's postpone that to Eid. Has anyone been successful in negotiating this? Oh, we have a few hands. MashaAllah, we literally have a few hands. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you. Alhamdulillah. Has it been easy? Yeah? I'm curious, and I'm genuinely curious. I don't want to just say this theoretically, like, is it possible? The first year was hard, the second year they got it. Allahu Akbar. Yes. COVID was a good transitioner, mashallah, it really was. That's true. That's true, the pandemic, subhanAllah. There, subhanAllah, subhanAllah. Yes, that's coming up when you're on your cycle, yeah. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Allahu Akbar. So these are all super creative ideas. And just to repeat for the sisters who didn't hear, using the week of your period for those who have their cycle to do their iftars during that week, since there's a little less, right, in terms of not being able to fast or pray, but you're doing other things. You're doing dhikr and other forms of things, and maybe doing the cooking for the other people that week. And then I loved how you said, and then instead of inviting them, you're actually sending the food to their house. So you're getting the sunnah of feeding other people without having to actually have, I know women, subhanAllah, who will spend 2-3 days getting ready for a big gathering, right? Cleaning and cooking and prepping, and right? And then that whole day is like shot, subhanAllah. And then everyone eats, and they're done within an hour. Done, all that prep done, right? SubhanAllah, and they rush out for Tarawih, and she's left with like the big mess for the next 2 days. That's a week of your Ramadan out of 4 weeks. And if you do that a few times, that's your whole month. Inshallah. Inshallah. Okay, so you have this whole plan. So sisters need to come talk to you about like, how do I organize my Ramadan? May Allah bless you. Look, this is why the sisters who are part of the halaqah, they know my style, and they know kind of like I push a little bit on this whole thing of Ramadan, because the idea here is the entire month, what is the point, spiritually speaking, of the fasting? The point of it is not just to feel the hunger pangs, and a lot of people will say, so that we feel what other people would feel who are not able to eat consistently every single day of the year the way we can. And yes, that is a part of it. It is the difference between what we say, the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is at an arm's length. At an arm's length, right? Oh, ya haram. Bachari. But empathy is putting yourself actually in the shoes of that very person. So you do the very thing that that person is doing, not because they're doing it on purpose, it's because they literally cannot drink and cannot eat. On Friday, you heard me share a little bit of a story of a sister that I met last week when I was in Qatar, who was pulled out of the rubble, and the only member of our family from Gaza who was pulled out. And I was listening to her. She sent the message of her story that we're going to be using in the conference, that is the Muslim Mental Health Conference coming up in a couple of weeks. And it's so heavy. It is so heavy. I will tell you just this small part of it. When she talks about not finding anything to eat or drink, that the water is literally salty water, and that is the only thing available. The amount of salty water she drank just to stay alive. And in terms of food, she said there was no food, there was no food, there was no food. And then somebody, like days later, gave her a fourth of a piece of bread. And she said, I took a bite, and then I just started taking pictures of it because I was so excited. To me, it was that piece of bread was like someone gave me a bar of gold. Do you understand what I mean? This is somebody who is a professor in the university in Gaza in psychology. She had patients, she had a lecture. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you and I, just, like an ordinary person who like everything changed, everything, right? And she said, I was walking one day and I saw a little kid in the street who was holding a little, I'm going to start crying again, was holding a little cookie, like a little biscuit. And she said, I had so much desire for the cookie in the little kid's hands. Like, that's how hungry. Do you know what I mean? And so when we talk about fasting, to feel what people truly do not have, no food and no drink, this is truly what is happening right in front of us right now in Gaza. Do you know what I mean? And in so many other parts of the world, wallahi. And that is one level of it. Everything that happens in Ramadan, our teachers remind us on a spiritual level, is what they would say in Arabic, kasr nafs. It literally breaks your nafs. It comes to break your nafs. So you feel that with pangs of hunger and thirst, but you also feel it with all the things that are otherwise luxurious, that are otherwise fun, that are otherwise bring a smile on our face. We're not meant to have doom and gloom and depression in Ramadan. That's not the point of Ramadan. What I mean to say is anything that typically would be, and subhanAllah, you'll see this if you go through, the Shafi'i Fiqh in the section where it talks about, one of the lines that always gets me when we review the fiqh, imagine this. When you see that when you're fasting, one of the things to literally any shahwa, any pleasure, even looking at blooming flowers that are beautiful. That's literally what it says in the fiqh book, right? Blooming flowers, right? Because it's beautiful. You're not meant to look at. It's not haram, don't get me wrong. It's not, I don't want to freak anybody out. They're like, wait, what? I can't do what when I'm fasting? Right? All it means to say is anything that would elicit kind of pleasure or desire and bring happiness to you, right? You're meant to kind of turn away from that in Ramadan because it's a breaking of the nafs. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And this is why now you understand all the comments I made about the festivities and the gatherings. It's just not in the spirit of Ramadan. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is this clear before I move forward from it? Yes? And so breaking the nafs, emptying the heart from the worldly desires and needs, what do you fill it with instead? Dhikr, remembrance of Allah, Qur'an. When I was in Syria, one of the beautiful things that I witnessed, in some of the years that I was studying there, I was studying with, not in the summers, but rather during the year. And during the year, they had me living with the college girls. I was a high schooler, but they were in college, the girls in my house or my dorm that I was staying in. And it was so amazing to witness them as students and when Ramadan came around, what they were like. Because they were ordinary students. Actually, they're not ordinary, mashallah. Everyone was studying Qur'an and doing amazing things in addition to their college studies. But as soon as Ramadan came around, it was like somebody had flipped a switch. Do you know what I mean? And suddenly, you couldn't get anybody to talk to you. You couldn't get anybody to converse with you. It was like Ramadan came in, and I'm telling you, they had their mushaf, and they would go to class, and they would come back from class and they would prepare dinner for iftar and all the normal things that we would do. But every single second, and I'm not kidding you when I say every single possible open second, their face was in the Qur'an. I'm talking about like walking from this room to this room and they're like holding their musaf, going into the kitchen and like preparing the meal, whoever's turn it was to cook that night. And literally you can hear her reciting the whole time she's like, preparing the food. Like on the bus ride or on the micro ride, the little bus that they would take, right, back and forth to the college campus on reading the Qur'an. There wasn't a single open moment in which the Qur'an wasn't being read. Because it's the month of the Qur'an. And so when we say, what is the month of the Qur'an? You put yourself a goal from now. And for many people, the way they even get ready for this is they literally start their Qur'an recitation from now. And our teachers would say, if you have a khatam, like you've been reading, they say, hurry up and try to finish that now before Ramadan comes in to open up a new, right? Khatam means reading from cover to cover. So, and almost like getting yourself in the habit or the pace of extra reading. And Sha'ban is a great time, which is what we're in right now, to get ready with that by doing extra Qur'an reading right now. If you do that from now, Ramadan comes in, it's not kind of like the shock of like all this reading. Because it's like when you haven't ridden a bicycle for a long time. Have you tried lately to get on a bicycle? Inshallah. You're going to wobble a little bit. It's going to hurt a little bit. And you're going to stumble and fall a little bit. And eventually you're going to like be zooming again, because it's like, you know, it's a core memory that you're not going to forget. Same with reading the Quran, but it just takes the practice. Rather you fumble and stumble right now in Sha'ban than in the month of Ramadan. So many sisters in that first week will have our qiyam, because inshallah rahmah, we're having every qiyam every Friday, alhamdulillah, virtually. And then we have one in person. We already know the date, right? The 23rd? 29th? Sorry, the 29th. The 29th of March, inshallah ta'ala. So please be here on the 29th of March, inshallah ta'ala. We'll do an overnight qiyam. One in person, and then all the other Fridays, because we do our Friday holidays, we're going to keep the same pace of virtual qiyams, inshallah, on the other Fridays. Why was I saying this? Oh, the first week, when we meet our sisters after a week of Ramadan has passed, the main complaint that I always hear every year is, I can't believe a week has passed. I've barely read any Quran. I've barely done anything from my goals, you know? And that's what I'm saying. Stumble, like trying to ride the bike now in Sha'ban, rather than use the first week of Ramadan to do that. That way you enter Ramadan ready to sail, inshallah. Another thing that our teachers often tell us about are all the other things that distract us or are pleasure-inducing. So think about all the ways in which you relax. Yes, I'm coming to the binging and the Netflix and the TV and the shows. And subhanAllah, shaitan has these amazing, amazing tactics, doesn't he? When do the most amazing sitcoms, or whatever you call them, shows, I don't know, musalsal or whatever you, soap operas, when do they start, when do they get released? In Ramadan. Turkish soap operas, Syrian, whatever, Arabic soap operas, what are the other ones? All the Desi ones, all the whatever ones, all of them, mashallah. They all get released in Ramadan. The shaitan knows exactly what he's doing, right? And people wait for Ramadan. They're like, I'm waiting for the next Ramadan's soap opera. Come on, guys. Inshallah. It's just not the time, nor the spirit of Ramadan. And I don't want to get too heavy on all of us. Everyone's going to be like, why did you have her go speak first? Goodness gracious. I already feel overwhelmed. Forgive me. But remember, our teachers talk about Ramadan as a sieve, a colander. You know what I'm talking about? Where you wash the vegetables or salad or however, and it holds the salad and it lets the dirty water out. They say that's exactly how Ramadan comes. Ramadan comes for some people, and it's meant to wash them. And all the dirty, right, all the sins, all the impurities wash out. But the good is retained. And for some people, they say Ramadan comes as a test. It becomes a test because it tests their faith, it tests their will, it tests their physically. Yes, it's a test to us physically, but it's also a test to us spiritually. And for some people, actually, subhanAllah, Ramadan is actually a backfiring for them. It actually hurts more than it helps. And this is where we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never to make Ramadan, or really anything in our deen, a test for us. Like, allow our tests to be in other things, not our faith, Ya Rabbil Alameen. But Ramadan does come for some to wash them, and for some to test them, right? And for some to elevate them. And we hope that we're of the group that's elevated in Ramadan. And trust me, we're not going to get washed or elevated with soap operas in the background. It's not conducive to that. So today's conversation really, honestly, is exactly this. I'm going to go through kind of a practical list of how to categorize our everything that we need to be doing, but it's also a reminder of all the things that need to kind of like any habits that we typically have over the many years that we've experienced Ramadan, or the brand new year, mashallah, the first time ever. Mashallah, it's amazing that you're coming right into Ramadan. How beautiful is that, mashallah. Our sister who's converted here today with us, mashallah. But think about for the sisters who have had a number of Ramadans in your life already, can you remember an extra special Ramadan? Like, is there one that really sticks out in your mind and you're like, that was my best Ramadan ever? Some of you are nodding, yes? When I ask this question, a lot of times sisters get a little stuck. And they're like, I don't know that I've had the best Ramadan ever just yet. And if you want that recipe, let's go through it, inshallah ta'ala, according to what the teachers of spirituality have taught, inshallah. And so here we go. this is how they categorize things. And I hope this is beneficial to you. I know when I learned this some time ago, it's been super beneficial to me, and it really helps. Okay, here we go. Number one, categorize everything in your life as number one, it can be dealt with after Ramadan. It can be dealt with after Ramadan. And this, and you're still before Ramadan, we're still in Sha'ban, so maybe we can edit it a little bit and say either now in Sha'ban or after Ramadan, so as to not use any extra time of Ramadan doing the things that can actually be postponed, right? Learning how to prioritize those things. Number two in the category, they say, figure out what is total nonsense. So in my book, I'm going to put soap operas there, inshallah. I'm also going to put, well, I'll leave it at that. Okay, inshallah. And number three in their categories, because then we're going to do this whole list of things and we'll base it on these three categories. Number three is things that need immediate attention. Things that need immediate attention. And for many sisters here who are responsible for feeding their families, that's kind of the role that many in this room play. Part of that is actually figuring out what needs immediate attention. Could be doing your, I don't know, Costco shopping or whatever it is, kind of like your in bulk shopping now, for example, as opposed to within Ramadan. It's not like it's wrong to go shopping in Ramadan, but it can be a waste of time if we haven't prepped and planned ahead of time. Other things, I know some sisters, mashallah, some in our community here that do this beautiful thing every year, that they actually get together as a group of sisters and they do a kebab making party, which I think is really funny in Sha'ban, but it's really cute. They gather the meat and they gather the spices and all the things that they need, and they actually sit around and actually make these patties and then freeze them. And for some families, they're happy with that. They're good, you know. You pull that out of the freezer every so often, right? And in your, whatever works in your household, for some people are like, oh, kebabs, I'm vegetarian, I don't, then whatever it is in your household that you could make ahead of time and prep and freeze, for example. This would go into number three, things that you can work on now and not have to spend too much time doing this in Ramadan. I know people want some fresh things too, but you can help and assist yourself ahead of time. Because a lot of sisters we hear from, they exert so much effort and time in the cooking and the prepping process. And so now we go into like our list of our list of things that our teachers have told us about. And I'm going to do this based on different categories because I'm looking across the room and I see young people. I see people closer to my age. I see people who are older than myself, mashallah, and may Allah bless everyone who's here. Alhamdulillah. And so we have different categories of sisters attending with us today. So let's start with our young people. Our young people who are probably students at this point, right? This is your main job, if you will. And I'll tell you this as someone who's been a perpetual student, alhamdulillah. When Ramadan comes around and you are in school and you are fasting and others around you are not fasting, it's always a challenge, to say the least. But this is a time, subhanAllah, where you have to understand that Ramadan, including the exams and including the quizzes and including the extra homework and whatever is coming your way, you want to actually be an exceptional Muslim in these schools and situations in which everyone's looking at you going, I wonder if that fasting student can actually do as well as everybody else, even though she's fasting. And so part of this is actually knowing that Ramadan has blessing and barakah in it, but you do have to help yourself by making sure you do get good enough sleep and getting up for suhoor. This is actually, the suhoor is a reminder to everybody that it is one of the core sunnahs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he has insisted in the hadith that we aid our fasting with suhoor. So for many, I'm not going to say it's a fard, but we would say if we put a category of things that are here's the fard, and these are the things as close to the fard as possible, suhoor would be part of that. Suhoor would be part of that. So I encourage you, and for all the parents in the room, you know that when your kids start fasting, suddenly suhoor becomes like obligatory on you too. Because the last thing you want to do is send them off into the school not having eaten well enough in the suhoor time, but it could be a pain. And so this is also a culture shift for many people. Our students at Stanford, because they stay in the dorms, they stay there. It's not a commuter campus, it's a staying campus. And so I'm always on their case about having suhoor, and they're kind of like, are you serious? You want me to get up at 4 and 5 in the morning? And I'm like, look, even if you end up they make these little suhoor boxes for them. We actually got the kitchen dining hall people to actually make suhoor boxes now. They have like a protein bar and some fruit and some water and so, mashallah. It took a few years to get this done, mashallah. But now they literally have these little suhoor boxes, and I'm like, listen, you put it right next to your head. Even if you just like get up and like drink a little bit of this and eat that protein bar and put your head back down. But I need you to have the suhoor because you are a student. That is your main job that Allah has put on your plate right now, and has also expected you to fast, because the rules of Islam are for all people, at all times, in all places, regardless. So you cannot say to me, oh, but I'm a Stanford student, can I not have to fast? That's just not acceptable. And I've actually had over the years people say to me, I have to take my big medical exams. And I said, yeah, I did too, inshallah. And we fasted when it was Ramadan. So, sorry, I don't have much empathy. But if a person has a medical condition, that's a different story. But other people say, but as a student, nope. Allah said, all people who are healthy, all people. Students are part of that. So I hope nobody's here so soft going, oh, but my kid, they're just a student. Nope. Inshallah. The only way you're going to reach level 2 and level 3 of excelling the elect and the elite is to understand that Allah has come to test us and to break our nafs and to make us feel the pangs of hunger, regardless of what our situations are, as long as we are healthy and able to take this on. There's people in the crowd going, oh my God, take the mic away from her, please. This is so intense. Alhamdulillah. But this is, Allah wanted us to do this and to remind us, I guess it's a good time to remind us all, that the Battle of Badr was actually fought in the month of Ramadan. Without the Battle of Badr, for those who have studied the Seerah, you would not be here today. That was a crucial milestone in the history of Islam. And to understand that it happened in the month of Ramadan is powerful. And it's symbolic. And if people can pick up arms and fight in Ramadan, we can do our exams in Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. Also, people might say, but I have a hard time concentrating. It's really, really hard. Just remember yourself that some of this is also the trickery of shaitan, and the big shaitan, inshallah, is locked up in Ramadan. But there is an amount of pushing ourselves. And this goes for everybody who is also working full-time, mashallah. Now, I also want to say the next kind of category here are, since I talked about people who are working, let's talk about all of us, inshallah ta'ala. There are a lot of pitfalls for here too, where people say, I cannot be as productive as possible in the month of Ramadan, so therefore I'm going to, cut corners, or maybe my work is not going to be as strong. And I encourage you that part of the da'wah that we understand we as Muslims do isn't in the books. It isn't in sending people books and giving them pamphlets or da'wah material. It's actually you. You are the walking, talking da'wah. And there is nothing like all the research I've ever seen and our lab has actually conducted has ever said that is reduced discrimination or Islamophobia or anything in terms of anti-Islam sentiment for people, such as knowing a Muslim. That is the strongest indication for the reduction of Islamophobia. It's you. It's you walking, talking, interacting with people. So if you have a job in which you are interacting with, majority not Muslim people, all eyes are on you as you're fasting. And, not just how much, people are like, oh, you're not drinking, not even water. That's the most famous line, not even water. You know what I mean? But then they're also watching your interactions, how much you grumble because you're hangry, right? And how much you might be kind of putting down Ramadan. I think that's an interesting thing that I see some of our sisters and brothers do as well. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm just this, and they blame on Ramadan. No, folks, that's your nafs. There is something called being hangry, yes, but that's like portion of it, and the rest of it is really our nafs. So pushing ourselves as much as possible, and knowing that this is a da'wah in itself. We've heard actually a number of people come to Islam out of being so intrigued by fasting. By fasting. Like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? And in our campus, we've actually had people fast with us. Like, come, try a day of fasting. Do you know what I mean? And I encourage you to just to help people see that there is barakah, blessings that carry you through, even in your work. So I hope, inshallah, same like the students here, you can hopefully do a great job in da'wah in your company as well. Now, another thing that happens for another group of people, mashallah, which is many of us in the room, are those who are caretakers to other people, moms, mashallah, or those who are caretakers in other ways, maybe your grandmas or other types of caretakers. And often people here say too, I do so much for other people, I don't have enough for myself. And as a group of women, I specifically here want us to pause for a minute and remind us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that our role is to make Ramadan easy for everyone else. That's not our role. That's not in the job description. Ramadan is for you specifically, right? And so your own prayers, your own dhikr, your own du'as, your own Quran reading, your own qiyam and standing in the night for prayer, and even as a caretaker, even as somebody who needs to get up in the morning and get the kids out to school and get the lunches packed in for the little kids, and also kind of get just the day going and the you know, whatever responsibilities are on your plate and table. And somebody's going to look at me right now and say, "You're making this sound like some sort of superstar." Do you know what I mean? Or superwoman. And I personally have a big issue with the whole superwoman concept, because it does require, all of this work that we do requires a lot of help, honestly. And so take assistance from the 3 categories that we just outlined. And that first category is figure out what can be postponed. A lot of times when I counsel women, as I'm in therapy and counseling, what I'm finding is a lack of prioritizing. And often it's a lack of prioritizing herself. It's prioritizing everyone else and not actually putting enough into my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My time for dua, my time for Quran, my time for dhikr. And a lot of this is actually not seeing very healthy examples of this. And those of you who've heard me talk about my teachers, you know, I always talk about, for me, being able to understand what balance was to see women who were able to balance in their life. But I'll tell you something. As well as they did in their homes, and as well as they did in their careers, and as well as they did as shaykhat, like in their deen work and da'wah, because a lot of them were doing lots and lots of teaching and da'wah in addition, one of the things that was so crystal clear to me was their own prioritizing of their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a recent halaqah, some of you have heard this, so I'll be repeating inshallah, but I mentioned to you the concept of tahajjud. You've heard this before. I know you have, mashallah. Tahajjud is the time that's right before the fajr time. It's actually any time in the night. It could be 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. It could be any time in the night. Normally we call qiyamul layl if you've been already awake, and then you pray in the nighttime. But when you sleep and get back up in the nighttime, we call that period in prayers tahajjud. And interestingly enough, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has us in Ramadan all get up in tahajjud time for suhoor. Right? And so a wise woman would say to herself, okay, I need to get up this family to feed them for suhoor, or this is part of my role. Then I'm going to have extra time prior to getting them up. That's for me. And then you're like, wait, you just reduced the sleeping time. Yes, I did, but we already said Ramadan is little sleep. SubhanAllah. Little sleep and little food. And so if you need to nap during the day, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ himself used to do, is he used to take his qaylula, or the small naps that would happen in that dhuhr time period, right? The after dhuhr time period. So use that to your advantage. And some people are like, I can't nap, or I don't have time to nap. I get it. I'm a terrible napper myself. But I mean to say it's really important to push yourself and give yourself, sometimes it's literally just an extra 15 minutes. Why do our teachers spend a lot of times really pushing tahajjud? Because as women, they'll say, look at all the other 24 hours of the day, and there is either someone who needs you or you need to be sleeping in all the other 24 hours of the day. But that 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, unless you have a newborn or a toddler who keeps waking up every so often, but that's a stage that passes, inshallah. All the rest of the years of your life, nobody really needs you at 4 and 5 in the morning. Can I say that again? Nobody really needs you at 4 and 5 in the morning. Your husband has his other hours. Your kids have their hours. Your work and your school and everything else has their hours. This hours, which are normally spent sleeping, is the golden hour, is what our teachers call it. Their recipe for success, because I would see them, and see them do all these things, how you balance all these things. I would say, what do you do? And the answer is always the same, tahajjud. Because barakah, or blessings, are written for us in Fajr time. And imagine if you're up even before the Fajr time, what happens here? You have the time to do Quran in peace, dhikr in peace, dua in peace. Just think in peace, subhanAllah. Just sit in peace. I can't emphasize it enough. And if you want the recipe of the great woman that we have met in real life, they are women of tahajjud. And this is where the barakah emanates from. And it's like Ramadan comes around and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, here, let me teach you all and kind of like put you into, we said a training camp. It's the first thing we said, a training camp. Let me give you a training camp of tahajjud by having to get up for suhoor. But just add a half hour to that. And I promise you, you're going to see major, major differences. Because every other recipe that they have, read this much Quran, do this much dhikr, do this or that, do this or that. It's like, okay, but when? But when? And for many of these women, they actually do all of those things in tahajjud. Because they're busy too. I just told you, they have careers and they have jobs, and they have families and they have kids and they have da'wah, they have halakas, they have teaching, they have other things that they're doing. So when are they doing things for them? It's usually in tahajjud. Does that make sense? So I can't emphasize that enough and tell you, look, even as busy as you are caretaking for other people, you have to make time for yourself. And some of that comes down to practical, putting things in a schedule. So I encourage you, now is where I'm going to ask you guys to actually pull out your notes, or for those of you who don't have anything to write on, your phones all have an app that has a notes app where you can start writing notes. And I'm going to ask you this, please follow along, inshallah. And hopefully you can thank me later, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to do this together. I'm going to go to my phone app. That's my notes app on the phone. It's just a, plain kind of notes app. And we're going to write Ramadan goals. Ramadan goals. And the reason we're going to do this is I find that when we do this together and now, because if I tell you this, maybe 10% of the room will actually go and do this. But if we do it together here and now, it's done. It's done, or at least it started. Ramadan goals. Number 1, Quran. These are categories, okay? We're not going to write anything just yet. We're just going to do the categories. And then give yourself some space. Those of you who are writing in notebooks, give yourself space for each category. And those of you who are writing electronically, you can, obviously, it's easy to edit afterwards. Number 1, Quran. Number 2, Qiyam. Number 3, dhikr. Number 4, dua. Number 5, personal interactions, and I'll explain that one in a minute. And after that, you are welcome to add your 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 as you wish, inshallah. But here's why I want to focus on the first 5. Number 1 is Quran, because Ramadan is the month of Quran. Between you and yourself, nobody's watching you or looking at what you're writing. Have a goal. Everyone here is different, but you have to actually actually write the goal, because we're going to revisit this in our qiyams. Hopefully you'll join us again for our qiyams. And throughout the month of Ramadan, I'll ask you, please pull out the goal sheet, right? Why? Because we've pinned it down. And even if you don't necessarily reach that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, "Innal a'malu bin-niyat," intentions, actions are counted by their intentions. So you make an intention right now. What is that intention? I want you to put two things down. One is, right, kind of what you think you can accomplish. Some people, they're still kind of on alif, ba, ta. They're literally still on the letters. And even reading one page in Arabic is a major accomplishment. For other people, you have been reading for a long time now. And so maybe I definitely can get to half of the Quran. For other sisters here, a whole khatam is easy for you because you've been reading and reading and you do this every time. Write two, right? Because I want you to write two things. I want you to write, what can I definitely accomplish? And be kind of conservative in that. And then the number two is, what is my dream goal? I would be amazing if I could do 2 khatams, something like this, right? That is kind of like the dream goal. Number 2, that's Quran. Number 2 was qiyam. For many, 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 many women, I find actually that the night prayers are really hard. In fact, many women have rarely prayed tarawih. And so, mashallah, some of you are active. I see you here, you're in the masjid, you're praying your tarawih, or maybe in whichever home masjid that you attend, you pray your tarawih. For others are like, look, I have a little kid at home, I have an elderly person I care for, I can't actually get to the masjid. I want you to put, again, we're at 2 levels, you have like A and B. Every one of these has like an A and a B, right? So A is, what can I definitely accomplish at minimum for tarawih? And this means every night that you're praying, right, of Ramadan. And I want to remind everybody here too, you'll probably do this in your fiqh classes, tarawih does not have to be prayed in congregation. Tarawih can be prayed by yourself and at home. I encourage you to come to the masjid because the more reward for congregation, of course. But if you can't, please don't skip that night. That's why it's number 2. I'm putting it literally right after Quran because there is no other month in which tarawih is prayed except for Ramadan. So it's an extra special thing, right? So, right after, inshallah. So let's go ahead and put our goal. I'm going to say this. For some of you who've never really spent time praying tarawih consistently, put 2 rak'ahs. 2. You're like, really? That's just that little? Because that is the bare minimum threshold. You can't pray anything less than 2 for tarawih. 2 is the bare minimum. The typical is going to be 8, 12, 20, right? And so in letter B, now you can write what is the dream goal. But every night I pray all 20 rak'ahs. Great, excellent. So you have 2 numbers. Are you guys doing this? Are people writing? I know this is like an exercise and I'm like being like a teacher. I feel like a classroom teacher on the board right now. Like, write the notes, inshallah. But trust me, it's really, really, really helpful, especially to look back. Number 3. We said number 3 was dhikr. Dhikr here is something special too. In Ramadan, there is it's split into 3s. And you know this, you've heard about the 3s of Ramadan, right? The thirds of Ramadan. What is the first third? Who remembers from the hadith? Uh-oh. It's been a year, hasn't it? It's been a year since last Ramadan. What's the first third? What is it? Yes, okay, she got the last one. Excellent. Alhamdulillah. That's the last third. Excellent. What's our first third? Mercy. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the first 10 days, the first third of Ramadan is mercy. And so your dhikr, and actually also that's number 3, and number 4 is dua. Your dhikr and dua in the first 10 days should be tied to mercy, to rahmah. What do I mean by dhikr that's tied to rahmah? You can say any dhikr, by the way, but if you want to definitely capture the mercy all through the day, this is like as I'm driving, as I'm commuting, as I'm walking, as I'm cooking, as I'm going and coming, I'm saying Ya Rahman, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahim. Or in English, mercy, something about merciful, right? You can say dhikr that's related to this. And this is what I would see my teachers do as well. In the dua, since we're kind of doing kind of 3 and 4 together here, in the dua, all duas are said, definitely make sure you emphasize mercy. Mercy for you. Mercy for the people of Palestine. Mercy for your children. Mercy for the people who are not Muslim yet, who are learning about Deen al-Rahmah, the Deen of mercy. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, the second third of Ramadan is what? Yes? Oh, we have a difference here. Yes. So the second third of Ramadan is forgiveness. So the emphasis here is on the dhikr is Ya Ghafoor, right? That's the name of Allah, the one who forgives. Or Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. That's the dhikr of the middle 10 days of Ramadan. Again, any dhikr, but especially istighfar. So again, as you're commuting, as you're walking, as you're cooking, as you're going, any moment that you're not physically in front of a mushaf or working or doing something else, your mouth should be saying what? Astaghfirullah al-azim, Astaghfirullah al-azim, right? Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghaffar. Okay? And the same thing with dua. All duas, but the emphasis should be on Allah forgiving us. And the last third, our sister has already said it is what? Yes, al-'itq min an-nar, right? Being literally protected or taken out of from the hellfire. And so that's the emphasis. That's the emphasis there. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you a person of Jannah and not a person of Jahannam. And that should be the emphasis of the dhikr and the emphasis of the dua, all duas. And that, of course, corresponds to the last 10 of Ramadan, in which the most common belief is also when Laylatul Qadr happens. And now we're going to just pause for a minute about Laylatul Qadr and say, in order to capture Laylatul Qadr, our teachers say, and I'm going to say this now, it's really excellent to say this before Ramadan even starts. In order to capture Laylatul Qadr, you just have to be awake, present. People say, do I need to be praying? Do I need to be reading? What do I need to be doing? Actually, it just says you have to be conscious, awake, right? And in it and within it, you can, of course, pray and fast and make dua and dhikr. And there's specific duas that the Prophet ﷺ taught his wife Sayyidah Aisha that we say. However, the most important thing is that you're not sleeping. Is that you're not sleeping during the night that could be Laylatul Qadr. That's the most important part of the story. So even when you're not having prayer because you have your period, just being awake and present captures Laylatul Qadr. So don't go to sleep and say, oh, I can't pray anymore, I'm going to go to sleep. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's usually, the scholars say, the majority opinion is that it's in the last third of Ramadan. Okay, now I'm going to get to number 5 because we'll have to close up, inshallah. Number 5 on our goals list, I said interpersonal interaction, right? Personal interactions. Why? Because in the month of Ramadan, with the big shaitan kind of locked up, what starts to show is who we really are. Yes, we can be hangry because we're hungry, and so we're getting a little angry and irritated and irritable. We don't have our caffeine, sure. And by the way, speaking of caffeine, for those who do drink a lot of coffee and caffeine, one of my teachers, may Allah bless her, I remember this every Ramadan she would tell us, she'd say, because she was a big coffee drinker, mashallah. And so she would say this was the hardest, she was a convert too, and she'd say, this is the hardest thing for me once I converted and started fasting. So in Sha'ban, in this month, she would actually start weaning herself from like, I don't even know how many cups of coffee, 5, 6, whatever it was. And she would go to like the 5, then the 4, then the 3, then the 2, and she would like start weaning in this month, right? So that all the headaches and all the things, she could pop a Tylenol if she needs to in this month. But when you're fasting, you can't, right? So she would kind of get herself ready, mashallah. So I encourage you to do the same if you're a very heavy caffeine drinker. Anyway, back to what I was saying about number 5 and personal interactions with people. This is really when it starts to show. And yes, we can account what? I'm going to say literally, I'm going to be very generous and say 20% for fasting, for irritability. The other 80% or more is our nafs. It's who we really are. It's who we actually are as people. And so when we snap, particularly at those in our household, our kids and our husbands and our parents and whoever lives in our household with us, that's us. That's us, mashallah. And that's where the work has to happen. And then there's the other people, but we tend to put a smiley face to everybody else, mashallah. It's the people who are closest to us that tend to hear and feel the brunt of our actual self, our character flaws. And all of us have them. And this is why there is a whole science too, matarat al-qulub, or the purification of the heart, which we don't have time to cover today, but is a main subject that we study in Ihsan, in purification. I want number 5 for you to have the 2 goals. It's A and B, right? A is the bare minimum. At bare minimum, you're going to think about the main people. Every household is different here. Some people are a blended family. Some people are you're a single parent. Some people have multiple generations living in the same household. You know your household. For A, you start writing, who are these people? Especially the ones I tend to get into some tension with. Who are those people? You write it for yourself. And I want you to literally write their names or their initials, whatever. Just please write them right now. Who are these people? Because your main minimum threshold and goal of Ramadan is not just the fasting of food and drink. It's actually number 5. It's actually the interaction with these people. And then B is where you write all the other people. Maybe the people who you see weekly but not daily. Right? Maybe it's the boss who drives you nuts, right? SubhanAllah. Or a coworker, for example, right? Those people you're going to write there as well, because this Ramadan, if you want it to be the number, remember we said the level 2 and 3, that's like very, very high levels of Ramadan, the elect and the elite, this is where we're going to focus on these 5 aspects. You work on the minimum, A, and try to reach the goal, the dream of letter B. I promise you, Ramadan this year will look so much different than the years before it, inshallah ta'ala. You want that extra special Ramadan? This is the very practical guidelines and recipe that our teachers have given us. Before I end, some people might say, but what about this and what about this? You missed this, and right? Because there's charity, for example, and I would put that, personally, I would put that as number 6, right? There's also other aspects of Ramadan, but I want you to customize the rest for yourself. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you customize based on what you know. Some people are very charitable. You say sadaqah box and they're like immediately putting in it. And other people, it takes a lot to kind of get them to donate something, subhanAllah. Everyone has, so you order it depending on what you know you need to work on. But of course, Ramadan is a month of charity. And I'll say one more thing since we touched the subject and we're all women here. Ramadan is also a time where many people mark their zakat. And zakat, of course, can be given any time of the year, but people like to give it in Ramadan because of the extra rewards that happen. And also because it comes once a year, and you have to give your zakat once a year. So they mark the yearly, right, giving by Ramadan. They kind of attach the two, even though they're not actually attached to each other. People attach them to each other, which makes sense. But then the thing I want to say, and I have to say this, and you guys know every year I get on our cases about this, we as women have zakat to give. And many of us, whatever savings we have, from whatever wealth we have earned from our own work, or from inheritance we've had, or gifts that have been given to us, or our dowries, or whatever has come to us, has reached, for many of us in this room, many of us, not everybody, but many of us, have reached the minimum threshold of zakat. Meaning, you have to pay zakat, not your husband, not your father, not your uncle, I don't know, not your brother, I don't know who else are these men. People are like, but the men, what men? They have their own zakat. They have their own zakat. You have your own zakat. And yes, there may be shared household income for husband and wife, for example, right? And that may be on him to pay, but you still have your own wealth that's yours, that's not his. And there is zakat due on it as well. Every year I say this, and there's at least a handful of women who are like, wait, what? SubhanAllah. And that's okay. We're learning. But I want to make sure that people are clear on that. And it actually happens, inshallah ta'ala. And if you have questions on the fiqh and how much and where do I pay and what do I do, inshallah, when we have our breakout sessions for the fiqh, our fiqh teachers will answer that per madhab for you, inshallah. All right. There are a lot of hands with a lot of questions. And so do we have a few minutes to do that before Asr? Can we take like 5 minutes of questions, 6 minutes of questions? They're going to pray at 4:30. Alhamdulillah, we have 8 minutes. Alhamdulillah. So, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to pause here and take some of your questions, inshallah ta'ala. But I encourage you, please, 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 keep each other in your du'as in Ramadan, right? Even when you're making all those du'as every single night. And please don't let a night go without making du'a. Please remember your sisters and brothers across the ummah. But remember everyone in this room right here. Say that initial group of women who met together to do their Ramadan goals, and they all wrote their goals. I hope they're doing well, inshallah. And when you see each other, inshallah, over the course of Ramadan in the masjid and during iftars that are here and there, please ask each other, how's it going? How are your goals going? I hope it's not intrusive or invasive. Is that okay? I just find that when people ask each other, they kind of remind each other, like, oh yeah, I need to go back to that. Inshallah ta'ala. May Allah bless you all. We're a community, and there's nothing, subhanAllah, like sisterhood, wallahi. May Allah bless you all, and our virtual sisters too. I want you to be part of this effort, inshallah ta'ala, as well.